Hey, so this is the next episode of Next Creators podcast. Today we have Miguel Piedrafita, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be curious, like, where did you grow up to begin with?
Yeah, so I'm from Spain. I've been here my whole life. I actually just turned 18 during the pandemic, so I haven't really taken advantage of my independency to go out and travel places and meet people. I'll be doing that soon, but most of my life, or not, if not all of my life, has been like in Spain.
Is it in bigger city in Spain, or is it?
It's not like one of the main cities. Like it's not Madrid or Barcelona. It's a relatively big city, but it's like not really known, and there's not a tech scene at all. If that's what you were wondering.
Mhm. I see. And when did you start on your first project? Do you remember?
I would say like I did remember I do remember when I started coding. That was like when I was 10, but I really didn't do any projects then. That was mostly me playing around with stuff, figuring out what I could make. I did make a couple apps, but like really basic learning how to code stuff. I think my first proper project would probably be Org Manager, which is I decided I've been learning for enough time. I'm going to try to make something with all that I know, and that was January of 2017. So that was probably the first thing that I made properly from start to finish everything.
What excited you about this first project? What was particular source of like excitement for you?
Yeah, so this project was actually open source. I decided I'm just like getting started with all this coding thing. So if I make the project open source, I will probably get people to look over my code and correct the things or tell me there's a better way to do this or whatever. So I made open source and I was really excited. Most of it for just like building something and having something that would be useful to people. It was an application that basically allowed GitHub organizations to create like open organizations where everyone could join the organization without having someone need to manually send them an invite. And that was like something that I saw happening a lot on a bunch of organizations where they had a GitHub issue where you just commented I want to join, and then people had to go manually go in and invite you. And I thought like this would be cool. And actually a bunch of organizations ended up using it, which was really cool. And I did learn a lot from that. So like I feel like at that point my main like the thing that drove all of this was wanting to learn more and also wanting to actually make an app from start to finish, like the front end, the back end, the design, everything. I mean, I was using Bootstrap at the time, so it wasn't that much to design, but I did want to make something from start to finish that wasn't just like an excuse to do a bunch of coding tutorials and figure out how to do a bunch of things. Actually, like, okay, so now I followed all these tutorials. Now I want to make something that is my idea from start to finish and complete that and have that done. So that was the motivation for that.
Got it. And did you specifically want to work on your own start to end, or did you also, as starting to work in open, you kind of found other people who are interested in helping out?
Yeah, so I don't think I have any preference either way. I think for me, historically, I like most of my projects have been just me. I did make a project with a bunch of friends, which actually died because we couldn't organize it correctly. So in my experience, like I don't think I have a preference. If I find someone who really complements my skills, I love to work with them. Now at Showtime, and we'll cover this later, I guess. We have a designer and someone for backend, and it leaves me more time to focus on my part, and I really like that. But yeah, I feel like most of my things have been me by myself, or maybe open source. I did get people to contribute on that, and the logo was designed by someone else for this first app. But I feel like it's mostly a thing of logistics.
Hmm. Got it. And when did you start adding new projects? When did you start kind of like working on more than one thing?
Yeah, so at the start, it was mostly one thing, and then I finished that thing, and then I got on to work on another thing. And then I like started picking up the pace, I guess. Like there was a point where I was basically starting something every weekend, and then there were some projects that just like I got bored of that same day. There were some things that I continued for the weekend and then was like, okay, so this is kind of finished. Let's leave it like there, like this. And then there were some that I decided this is actually really cool. I'm going to try to continue doing that, which is also like most people ask me, how do you find ideas, or like how do you figure out what you want to work on? And my answer is like, I work on everything, and then some things I don't get really excited about, and some things I do get really excited about. So I just like keep doing it's like natural selection of ideas. I just like keep doing the things that I enjoy, and the other things, if I get bored of them, I just like stop doing them. And apparently I do have a decent sense of what, for some reason, what is interesting to build for me seems to correlate with what other people find interesting for it to exist or to use. So it's been going pretty well. That's right, at least for me.
Interesting. And how did you get started on DM Link?
Yeah, so the M-Link was one of these ideas where I was like, I don't exactly remember what I was doing. I just like thought, um oh yeah. So I think this was just before starting to get into crypto, and I started following more people from the Gen Z Mafia community, and I was like, I want to. It got to a point where my feed, like my Twitter feed, was really really cluttered. Like there were a bunch of things I really wasn't interested at or in, and so I was thinking it would be really really nice if there was a way that to make it so that you could subscribe to someone's topics. So, for example, if you follow me on Twitter, you are getting everything I tweet about, which is I tweet about a bunch of different things. Maybe you can follow me, but say only I only want to get your tweets about like this project or your tweets about crypto. And so I was thinking it would be really cool if this existed. And then I thought, is there any way that we could build this, that I could build this right now? And then I started looking into it. I discovered that Twitter DMs are actually way more powerful than what we get access to in the app, and you can have like buttons and actions and automatic replies and stuff like that. And so I basically ended up building a newsletter platform for Twitter where you can subscribe to a Twitter list, or not a Twitter list because that's a separate thing, like a Twitter DM list. And then I can publish to that list, and all of the people in that list get DM'd with that tweet that I just posted to that list. And yeah, that was again something that started as a weekend thing, and then I started developing a little bit more. And actually, Twitter got involved in that one, which is funny because I tried it out and I basically sent a bunch of people joined the list, and I sent a tweet I think to 100 people, and then Twitter basically blocked my app because they said, I mean, it's pretty clear why they would do that, because it's like what is a good use case for sending the same message to 100 people in a second? Like that's a very clear, it would trigger any of the spam filters that they have. And I actually got in contact with Twitter and I got them to whitelist my app, which was really nice. And I know, like, they have told me that Twitter employees talked internally about it, which is really nice.
That's cool. And is it being used right now, fairly actively right now, or?
It's in early access, and by that I mean I built the whole thing in like a week, and then I said I don't like the design. I'm going to redo the design, and then I didn't. I got into crypto, so I didn't redo the design, and then it's in there. Like I think two people have access, but I have no idea if they are using it. I do use it for, like, if you go to the m.link right now and you click the get notified, instead of like allowing you to enter your email, you actually get to subscribe to so you get to like try the product where you are subscribing to it. Because I use a dm.link list to let people know about dm.link updates. But yeah, it was mostly of like a thing of it works, but I'm way too, how do I say this? I care way too much about design on things that I launched for some reason. This was the same thing with my other project Sites, which took me 8 months to launch, and most of that was I redesigned the front end 3 times from scratch because I just didn't like how it looked. And actually, after launch, I have done it 2 more times. So yeah, that's something that I need to get better at. Just like, because it's ready, and the only reason why most people don't have access to it is because I think the design could be better. But yeah, it's not in active usage just because like it's not open to the public, but a few people do have access to it.
That's cool. And maybe you can, since you mentioned side sauce, you can mention also like how did you get started on that one?
Yeah, so side source, it was a really funny thing because the side source, what it does is basically it takes any kind of dynamically generated site, which is any site that has to run some backend code to return the HTML to you. Like, I don't know, a WordPress blog needs to access the database every time someone visits a page or stuff like that. And then it converts it to a static site so that it's much faster and much it scales to infinity and all these things that you would need to spend way too much money on servers to get working with a traditional architecture. And the way that started was I wanted to have a static site for my blog, but I also wanted to use this publishing platform called Ghost because I really liked it. And so I said I could build basically a static site using one of these React frameworks like Next.js, which which takes care of pulling the data from there and displaying it. Or I could build a small program that just like creates a static site from that Ghost site. And I basically decided I don't want to spend a weekend building a static site for my website. And so that made me spend 8 months building the program that would avoid me spending a weekend on this, which doesn't sound like really productive optimization, but it ended up working out great because it turned out that this was a problem that other people have. So yeah, it was mostly a thing of I'm lazy, so ended up spending too much effort on not doing a little bit of effort I didn't want to do, which is really funny. But yeah, and then I got the thing working. I spent way too much time redesigning it and then launched it. And apparently, everyone really liked it. Like, that was, I had made a bunch of projects before and people did know, knew me before. But that was like one of the things where people really started to realize I existed outside of like my local communities that I was part of, locally in the internet sense.
I see, interesting. And which communities you were also part of at the time? Curious.
Yeah, so at the time I was part of mostly two communities. The Laravel community. Laravel is a backend PHP framework. I think the top PHP framework right now. I don't think it was when I started using it. It's what I've been using for years for all my apps. All the backend of my apps is always Laravel. And I really, really like the philosophy, the app, the framework, everything that it allows you to build, and also the community on Twitter and on forums is really, really welcoming and really great. And that how was actually how I got started in Twitter, just like being part of this community, and then also the indie maker community with which is just like people who do these side projects and don't really want to like build a company out of them, just want to maybe get some side income and have fun and learn. It's like this really nice culture around building apps just as yourself on a small team where you don't really go all businessy, you go really informal and you act more like a human than a corporation. I really, really like that culture. So I was really active and really known on those two communities, but this was like the project that allowed me to go out and have more people knew about me.
Mm-hmm. And when did you also get started on Our Light on a social network?
Yeah, so that was a thing where I basically last summer I started looking into social networks. I don't really remember why. I think there was like some Twitter controversy where they announced a new rule or something, and I have been wanting to build something like that for a while because like it was trying to solve, I guess, for me the same problem that DM Link solves now for Twitter. Just like I want to have a social network where I can follow people's topics, and also I wanted to have a social network that was really easy to integrate with. Like Twitter famously doesn't have a good API, and they've been working on fixing part of that recently, but it's still not the greatest. Like I want to build a social network that had an API similar to Stripes, which is like the best API product I've ever used. and and so I started making a list of all the things I really think could be improved on social networks, and I ended up with this big list with not only things like as such as allowing developers to integrate with it or following topics, but also like hypotheses about around like harassment and all these other problems that social networks have, such as and also like addiction and all these issues. So I said, I have this hypothesis. I'm going to try to build a social network where you don't get addicted to it. Like it's like really healthy to use. And also, everyone is another one of the topics is I wanted to require identity verification for every user, so that my hypothesis was if people's account is associated with a real identity, there will be less incentives to behave badly, which now has kind of been proven by Twitter the other day with all the I don't know where I saw it. Like they were saying, for all the accounts that we checked for abuse, most of them were easily linkable to an individual. But still, I had this hypothesis, and I also wanted to, yeah, build an app that didn't try to get you addicted, and that also it was a paid social network, which was a thing that a lot of people were confused about, but I was thinking I want the incentives of this to be really in line with the users, whereas current social networks like Twitter or Facebook, like their consumer isn't really the user, is the advertisers, and so they have the incentive to build for those people. And so I had all these ideas, and I said, I want to build a social network that follows all these principles. And I got like really, really excited about this for like 3 days, to the point where I started pulling all nighters to build this because I really couldn't sleep because I was too excited about it. And then I basically ended up building like a sort of Twitter without retweets, because I intentionally didn't add retweets, but basically got to feature parity with Twitter with like replies, posts, profiles. I had cross posting to Twitter and all these things in like 2 weeks. And then I started realizing it wasn't such a easy problem as I thought it was, because like I never said it would be easy, but there were like really big problems with like if you build a social network that is a paid social network, all the representation and diversity problems that you already have on free social networks are going to become much worse and stuff like that. And so I started basically thinking about it and realized that I didn't have a great solution for that. And I put it on pause, and it's been there ever since. Like all the code is open source on GitHub. I also wanted to make the whole thing open source so that others could collaborate and reuse the code and whatever. So it's still there. Anyone can use it if they want. But I post like the hosted version because I really didn't have a solution to all of these things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's super fascinating. And so, when was the time you started also learning about Web3 space? Was it on the same roughly timeline or earlier?
No, I actually got into Web3 just like in January this year. So it's something that apparently like now people want to talk to me. Like I had really interesting conversation of like Web3 people who want my opinion on things, which is really weird taking into account I'm one of like the probably the earliest. It's like I did know about crypto. I had read the Bitcoin white paper and all those things before NFTs exploded, but I really didn't get into it and really look into all these Web3 stuff until after that. So I'm like really early on all of this. And so what happened is it was like kind of a coincidence. At the time I had like started to learn 3D art, like with Blender and 3D modeling, because it was something that interested me. And I joined a Telegram group made by a friend, um, where we posted or what we were working on, and just like gave each other feedback and tips for improving. All of us were like starting to do this, and at the same time, like there was a weekend where my timeline started completely exploding with NFTs. Like no one was talking about NFTs, or maybe one person that I follow was talking about NFTs, and then suddenly everyone was talking about NFTs. And then at the same time, there were these people, the tech optimist people, or the cabbage people, because they started putting cabbage emojis on their usernames. And I thought like this is really funny. I have no idea what this was about, but I thought this is really funny. So I basically added a cabbage emoji to my username as well, and ended up joining a Telegram group they had created. And they were like a group of friends just like building Web3 things. And it uh, apparently one of the people who had like decided to start this was also in the other chat about 3D art, and they saw the things that I was making there, and they decided to invite me to help. Because at start, this group was basically making cabbage 3D art and then selling it. And so I was invited to go help make some cabbage art. And I started like meeting all these really, really awesome people. Like Paris. Paris was the person who actually got me into the group. And there was Alex, who is now my boss, and all these other really, really cool people. And I started like learning more into Web3 and finding a lot of resources, reading a lot about it. I was in a video call with these people most of the week. Yes, like we were building the cabbages and chatting, and it was like really, really interesting and something I it got me like nothing ever had gotten me before. Like it got my interest more than anything I had ever looked into. And so I started going deeper and deeper and building apps and looking into how to code for Web3. And then at this time I had just like finished high school. And so I was supposed to go to university in 2020 and I went to the UK to do philosophy. And then the whole COVID thing happened, and I was basically in the campus, which was completely empty, doing online class. And so I said, like, fuck it, and went back to Spain. And so I was figuring out what I wanted to do next, because I wasn't going to go back to that university next year because it will probably be the same thing. And so I basically said, I want to try to get a job because until now, all that I've done has been like hack on my own projects, and I want to try this other thing. And I said I want to get a job in crypto because this is really, really interesting. And I ended up working for Alex and his company his startup Showtime that he had just started.
Interesting. What? How did you go about looking for a project to join? Did you go to many different communities and kind of like try to engage with many different projects, or was it like kind of instant kind of you you pulled into Showtime?
Yeah, so the way I got into crypto actually was like in a really public way. I've always been a fan of building in the open and learning in the open. And so when started getting into crypto, I started like documenting the whole journey, tweeting about it, making Twitter threads, all these things. So when I started, even before I said like I'm even before I decided I want to look for a job in Web3, like most of the founders of Web3 projects already follow me because I didn't know that much, but I was learning a lot and I was sharing everything that I learned. And I also was, and I'm 19, which I guess like I do play the age card a lot, which is maybe way too much, but like it's a marketing tactic, I guess. It's personal marketing in a way. And so all these people were already following me. And so when I said, I think I tweeted about like I'm thinking about getting a job. Um, a lot of people reached out to me and offered me, and I actually reached out to a bunch of people reached out to me, and the ones that didn't reach out to me, I had reached out to them, and they knew about me. So I was actually like, well, and everyone like basically knew what I was doing. Like even for joining Showtime, I didn't go through a technical interview because I had been putting my work in the open for all these years, so that they, in a sense, I had already proven my skills and I had been in this in this group chat with Alex for the past few months, just learning and sharing what I was doing. And so I was somewhat like maybe not in the space in general, but in the space of like um crypto people building cool small things, or maybe not small things, but like crypto people, especially in the NFT space. For coders, I was relatively well known, so I actually got a bunch of good offers of places where I should go work with. And I ended up going with Showtime basically because I thought basically Alex is a little bit older than me, but around my age. He's also from Europe and recently moved to the US. He's starting a startup. I feel like this is like the place where I can get the most personal growth out of, aside from all the working on cool Web3 stuff. And so I ended up going with Showtime.
Nice. And what was your so far experience? How do you compare it with like working all of your projects on your own versus now kind of like working as a part of the team, but it's probably also not by any means it's not like traditional probably setup there, right?
Yeah, so it's still like really early stages. We have a small team, and so our way of working is still very. We set a bunch of goals on Monday. We just like hack on stuff. It's obviously a remote company. It's an SF company. I'm in Spain, so it has to be remote. And so I basically just hack on stuff during the day, and then at the end of the day, we just like on Friday we see what we made, what can be deployed, and we deploy that. So it's really still indie. It will probably move away from that a little bit in the next few weeks and months as we try to grow the team a little bit. Which, by the way, if anyone listening is looking for a Web3 job, we are hiring for front end, back end, mobile. Like if Alex listens to this, he's going to be mad at me if I don't say it. But yeah, so for now it's still pretty similar to how I used to work by myself, and that was actually one of the other things that I really liked and what I joined. They have a culture which is like really similar to how I would organize something like this, but yeah, it's going to get a little bit more startup-y, I guess. But yeah, I actually forgot the question.
That's pretty much what I was asking. How do you organize the work and how it's different from your own projects where you pretty much was on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main difference is like in my own projects, there's no schedule at all. Like I was saying, my projects are pretty chaotic because the way I work, I may be like productive for 2 hours randomly and have the 10 hours worth of work done in 2 hours. And then for the rest of the day, I am unable to do anything productive at all. Or maybe like I can, but I'm way slower. So I work in bursts in a sense, and it's not like I'm completely useless when I'm not in the middle of a burst. It's just like I, for some reason, I can get like really, really, really productive in like an hour and do, yeah, a bunch of hours or days worth of work in an hour, and then the rest of the time I'm like way slower than that. So my projects, yes, as my strategy for my projects is just I just wait for this burst and then make use of them. Whereas for Showtime, I obviously can't not work when I'm not in the zone. So I just like work all the time on that, or at least the hours that I do need to work on it.
And when it comes to like sleeping schedule, it's kind of like as a result of burst, it's also like completely all over the place.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at that. We actually, when the friends from the cabbage patch, we had a Telegram group called "Go the Fuck to Sleep," which consisted on us basically messaging each other at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., just like saying "fuck," because yeah, because it's not like I feel like this happens to most of the people who are building stuff on Web3. Like I feel like we are not the only ones. But yeah, I'm trying to get it a little bit better. But yeah, this past couple weeks I've been going to bed at like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. So it's not great. Hopefully in September I'm going to be moving out in September and going to a new place and actually having a place of my own. So I'm hoping to actually set a schedule and follow it then. But for now it's more like free form, sleep when I'm tired, work when I'm not, etc. At least on the weekends.
That's cool. And how do you think about the NFT space, the place that Showtime is playing in ecosystem? Like, how do you think about evolution of the space as well?
Yeah, so I think like right now NFTs are mostly digital art and crypto art in a sense. And we're starting to see a little bit of NFTs applied to other things like gaming. I've seen a bunch of gaming related NFT projects, still collectibles, but NFT projects pop up recently. I do feel like NFTs are basically like a new primitive for the web in a sense, like similar to how Web 1 was basically hyperlinks and images and just like documents. And then for Web3, we got like a layer of state on the web, which was like cookies and stuff. Web3, aside from all the blockchain stuff, does add like this primitive for the web, which is an NFT, which allows you to own something. It's like if you think about it, in the web, you don't really own anything. Like your tweets are yours just because Twitter says they are. They are in a sense lending those to you. So there's not a sense of property in the web. And NFTs are a way to own something in the web. And they are also like really composable, being built on top of smart contracts and the blockchain. And so I do feel like we are just starting to see the beginning of what NFTs enable. And it will be like something that most apps that don't have to do with art or with collectibles at all start using for all kinds of things that we can even begin to imagine now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How do you think also about the amount of people entering the space? Do you see a lot of your friends from the previous communities joining crypto, or not really? You feel like it's very early still in terms of.
Feel like it's a little bit hard to tell just because like since I entered crypto, my feed has gotten way more diluted with crypto stuff because I started following crypto people and now all my feed is crypto, and so I don't really get to hear that much from all the people that I followed before unless they get like a really big tweet. Um, I do think like a bunch of people join every time there's like a big wave. Like I joined with the NFT space. At some point, we'll get a creator token bull market, and then at some point we'll get a bunch of other bull markets. Probably there's kind of been another NFT bull market right now, kind of not like as mainstream as before, but it's going way up. And so I think like with every big wave, it brings more people to the space. And m- I've been trying to like crypto pill a bunch of my friends, but it's slowly I'm slowly working my way up. Feel like it's like there's a big stigma about like crypto. That's 'cause at least when I started getting into it, I had all these preconceptions of like, oh, crypto is just like Bitcoin and Ethereum and coins that go up and down, and also it's full of scams. Because like the last time I had heard about crypto was with all the ICO stuff, which was like companies racing with crypto, and that usually turned out to be mostly scams. And so there's like all this preconception about like what crypto is, and then crypto is about like decentralizing control and building a new web and all these other things which you don't even know about if you don't look into it. So I feel like it's hard to get people to i- do a little bit of research on the topic, and once they do, it's like really easy to fall into the rabbit hole. At least that's how it was for me.
Yep, that makes sense. And also, Showtime seems like focuses quite a bit on social as well, right? So, how do you think about evolution of NFTs, but going into more like social?
Yeah, so actually, Vitalik is the founder of Ethereum. Vitalik's talk on the last Ethereum conference, ETHCC Paris, was all about like how now that we've built all of this, we can start building social protocols. He was basically saying like the next social network will be built on top of the blockchain, and I do think like I started building Oralite to solve all these problems, and now looking back into it, most of those problems are like solved automatically with crypto. Like all of the being composable, all of the mission and the values, all of the aligning incentives with users, that's all crypto people. And actually, I know one of the people in the college group, which is the founder of Aave, which is a lending protocol, is actually working right now on building a crypto first social network, which I'm really excited about. And so I feel like there's crypto has Web3, which will replace Web2 eventually, or at least that's what I believe, has chance to look at all these Web3 protocols where like the incentives are not aligned at all. Companies try to get like use out in a sense all their users, all of the time that they can get them addicted. They don't really care about their users at all these things. There's a chance to rebuild all of this with Web3, where something that is really really interesting about Showtime is like Showtime doesn't own any of the content. All the content that you post on Showtime is yours. Like we basically just like look at your Ethereum wallet and check what NFTs you own, and then we display those. So it's your content, and we're just like displaying it. See, something like if you think about stuff like that with like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, in none of those you really own your content. Like, and I'm sure there's like some kind of even for TikTok. I'm pretty sure that TikTok, probably in their terms of service has a section that says like we can use your content for promotional or whatever if we want to, or if not, like it's still you don't own the content that you create, and I feel like that's really important because the other big difference between Web2 and Web3 is in Web2 You kind of like try to make a business out of the users, like the users are the product. In Web3, the most common revenue model that I've seen, or like way to earn money, is you allow your users to earn money and you take a small commission out of that. And so that's like a really big difference, and it's really interesting to think about like how that looks for a social network. Like how can we not only um give the users like the rights they deserve and have them own their content and all these things, but also how do we enable the users to make money and then make the platform profitable just by like maybe taking a small percentage out of the users earnings, or maybe like not even that. There's like the probably top application on the Ethereum ecosystem, which is Uniswap, doesn't even like take any percentage um out of the transactions, and it has like I think it crossed a billion in volume recently.
That's right. So there is like this other side of it, which is like token economics, which actually has to do with economic upside, creating actually ownership in your communities, right?
Yeah, like I feel like the Web3 vibe is mostly like you you have to really look into game theory, look into what incentives you are creating, artificially create incentives to do what you want. Like instead of just like creating something and then figuring out what happens, you specifically fabricate all these things to make sure that they will naturally do what you want them to do. All of the people that are building protocols on crypto are really 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 smart and put a lot of thought into all this incentive stuff. And also you have to look at all the value that is being created, and then you make sure that all the parts that are providing value are getting some of that back. So an example that I see is like when a YouTuber, for example, is creating a video, they are creating value, and usually they are not getting value out of the content that they are creating and the people are enjoying. They're getting like the money that they get, they do not get it from the video, they get it from like things that are on top of that, like advertisement or sponsorships or whatever. So they are not getting they are not getting like their value recognized. They are mostly having to figure out ways. I made this and now I have to figure out a way to make money with this. Feel like Web3 is way more about like I made something that provides value to a bunch of people who are being entertained by my content. So Web3 is more about you getting value out of that without having to do anything on top of that. And we are seeing that right now with art and collectibles, and I'm sure that we'll see it for any other type of content or like value creation in the future.
Hmm. You also mentioned briefly earlier in conversation about gaming. Do you follow anything that's happening in gaming, or do you feel like it's kind of early?
I feel like it's still incredibly early. All of the biggest games on crypto, at least that I know of, are Dark Forest, which is like a space exploration game, whatever. I feel like that's super geeky, and no one that isn't an Ethereum developer would be interested in something like that. I could be wrong, but it feels like not the type of game that you would build if you want a lot of people to play. And then there's Axie Infinity, which is kind of like an RPG game, which is it's more mainstream in the sense of like the concept, but it's still made in a way. So like I think like you if you want to play this game, you need at least three monsters, which are NFTs. And I like now I think like those are at least you can start playing without less than 1k at least dollars. So it's not really accessible. I still haven't been I do follow a lot of like indie developers on YouTube and other platforms because I really really like that kind of community. And I'm yet to see indie developers start making like small games. I don't know, make a Flappy Bird clone where the save files are NFTs, or like stuff like that, which is really really simple and doesn't really, and that some everyone can play. That's how what I think I'm missing. There are a bunch of games that use NFTs but and crypto, but they aren't any like mainstream accessible games in a way. And so I do feel like we are going to start seeing way more of that in the next coming months.
Yep. And in terms of also the evolution of social and social networks, do you see a lot of interesting projects? You mentioned one from your community. Do you see any others?
I haven't seen that much talk about others, but like as I was saying, the founder of Ethereum, his whole conference talk was about like how we like a call for someone build this, or like people need to start building this. So I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of this recently.
Yep, that makes sense. And for people who are like still kind of curious about crypto but somewhat skeptical, what kinds of things did you find that's working so far with your friends? Or do you feel like it's just like long term and they'll come on their own term to Web3 on their own time?
I feel like it's inevitable and everyone will end up working on Web3, at least everyone who works on the web. I do feel like if people want to like are asking yourselves how can I like look more into this, and or how can I get started with this, or how can I learn, like how do I look into this? My advice is, first of all, join a community of crypto people, because like the energy on the crypto community is incredible. Everyone is super welcoming. Everyone is like, you can pretty much, if you have a question about a project and you haven't seen it answered anywhere, you can most likely DM the creator of the project on Twitter and they will just reply to you. And everyone is like really welcome and really wants to help. And so it's a really, really cool vibe. And everyone is also like super excited and super passionate about what they're building. So I would recommend join a community, a small community of people who are motivated around this. I will just like plug the Tech Optimist community. We have a Telegram group called Cabbage Patch, which is just full of really, really smart people and also people who are getting into crypto and people who are thinking about getting into crypto, or people who wrote my a bunch of my articles that I wrote about how to get into crypto and join the group and then still haven't gotten into it but will at some point. So I feel like it's a pretty good combination of people you would want to be around with if you're trying to learn more with this. The other thing that you can do is, as I mentioned, I do have an article that I wrote when I was actually before working at Showtime, when I was actually getting started with this. So it's written from the perspective of someone who is still figuring that out, which I feel like is missing from most of the resources. And so that's on my. You can go to. I guess I don't know if this has show notes. If there is, they will probably put the link down there. But you can go to my personal website and it's called like how to learn crypto, and it's like an article that explains how I usually I go about approaching a new subject, but all the examples are like with crypto specifically. So I listed like the a link to join the Cabbage Patch community there, and a bunch of resources to learn more and get started, and my advice on like how to start building Web3 apps. So that's the resource I would recommend to anyone who is at least considering learning more about this.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Do you think much also about local communities, kind of like in, for example, in Spain, or in my case in SF Bay Area? Do you see value in starting to build crypto offline communities, or do you think it's inherently like online?
I mean, it's inherently online, but I feel like it still helps a lot to have people in real life you can talk about this. It's like I've been, as I mentioned, my city or my zone doesn't really have any tech community, let alone crypto community. And so I always only get to talk about this on video calls or like Twitter and stuff. And recently with Showtime, we went on like a company retreat, and I got to meet Alex and all these other people in real life. And we basically spent 5 days just like chatting about crypto all the time. And it was really, really amazing. So I do think like there's value on starting or joining local crypto communities. It's just like everything is going to go to the metaverse at some point, but it's still like it's more of a thing of like it's nice to be around people who share the same interests and passions as you more than it is about like crypto specifically, I think.
Yep, that makes sense. So, if people want to learn more about your projects or what you're written about crypto, pretty much your website is the place to go.
Yeah, my website, I have a really, really incomplete list of projects on my website and a bunch of articles that I wrote. Most of them are not about crypto, but the last ones are. And also, you can follow me on Twitter, which is where I basically share everything that I'm working on and building and launching. Like as I was mentioning, when I randomly start a project at 3 a.m. and finish it at like 8 a.m., I tweet about it and share what I'm building and what I'm learning there. So that may be interesting to follow as well. And I've been also, if you are a coder, I've been also recently doing a bunch of live streams on Twitch, like live coding. It's mostly for now just building small apps, but I do want to like learn. I set for myself as a goal to learn Solidity, which is the programming language that you code smart contracts on. And I want to get really, really good at Solidity. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm basically going to live stream myself learning that for the entire month of September on Twitch. So if you are looking into how do I learn something like this, or just want to like pop in and ask me about crypto, that's probably the best place to do it.
That's cool. Do you have any other things like parting words of advice for listeners, either for Next Creators podcast or for Human Guild community?
I do have one suggestion for anyone that is listening to this, which is like get into crypto. If you haven't get into crypto, if you have get into crypto more, specifically get into the NFT space, get into try to get a community of people who are passionate on what you on crypto specifically, but on what you are doing in general because it's amazing. And for this podcast, maybe try to get Alex. I feel like that would be interesting. He basically was one of the first persons of the first people to tokenize himself, and then use the money that he got from that to move to SF and start a company. I feel like that's a really really interesting story. So yeah, he's a busy man, but you can probably try to get him in.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Well, sounds good. Thanks a lot for coming today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.